Bards, it's going to be a quiet one tonight.
Oh, it's not too much to get excited about, mate. We're just in a holding phase at the moment.
And no Adam.
No Adam, he's got commitments with family, which is fair enough.
He had plenty to say, and we'll hear from him next week, no doubt.
I'm sure that he'll save it up, and it'll be a big Wetters wins next week.
There'll be a double-barrel shotgun next week, won't it?
It will indeed.
So, let's start with match review.
Okay, mate, that was a super exciting game down at Tassie. Another poor crowd, but we'll leave that alone this week. Hawthorn 21-14-140, defeating GWS 9 goals, 357. Yeah, lacklustre. We kind of established a 5-goal lead, held it at about that, and then piled them on in the last quarter to win by 80-odd points. So a little bit out in my margin. I did say 80 points if we didn't try, and lots if we did, so maybe we didn't try too hard.
I said 15 goals, and it was getting there, and they needed a point, and they needed a goal, and we just ran out of time.
You're close. You're very close, though. You're closer than me anyway. We had Roughhead with 5, Gunston with 3, 2 to Burgoyne, Franklin, and singles to Mitchell, Lewis, Sewell, Shields, Smith, Hodge, Hale, Puopolo, and Bailey.
Do you find it interesting that Buddy's not our leading goal kicker this year? In fact, it's Ruffy.
It's a very good spread they've got at the moment. Ruffy's in a nice state of form. Thought Franklin was pretty good on the weekend. Started getting up the ground a bit more and more of the ball, which was good. Finished with a couple of goals. But to be honest, they didn't look to him that much. Even Ruffy's first goal, Franklin could have quite easily have had a shot from about 45. Saw Roughhead on a good lead and popped it out in front of him. So he's going to give him off. As long as he's doing what he needs to do, I'm happy with that.
Not part of a grander plan, Bards?
Well, maybe we're just making sure that we're right in case he's not around. But we'll see when that time comes, I guess.
So, yeah, it was pretty lacklustre, and unfortunately the crowd was pretty lacklustre, as much as I don't want to say that to our Tasmanian friends, because they have been supporting the team, and I can understand why. That's a pretty hard game to get enthusiastic about, isn't it?
It is, mate. It's that time on a Saturday afternoon when, everyone's playing local footy on a Saturday afternoon. You've got a team that's, been in the comp for 5 minutes and haven't really got any star factors, and not an attractive game to come and watch. That's the way it turned out as well.
We need to give them something which is a bit more mid-table, don't we, at least, not just the bottom teams.
That's it. Look, last year they got Sydney, so I suppose, even though at that point Sydney weren't expected to be right up and about, but they were in the end. They tend to get one a year that's not a bad game, and the other 3 are Western Australian or Queensland teams. So, yeah, they do miss out. It would be good to see some other teams go down there.
So, let's get on to the Barslow votes. And I put the votes up this week, and Jeff said leaderboard, question mark. So I have it that Birchall and Hodge are on 18 apiece.
You would think that Jeff, being a teacher, would be able to add those votes up himself and create a leaderboard, but obviously wanted you to do the job, Grant.
Well, I'm glad I know that, Bards, so I'll make sure it's right, and clearly he's probably added it all up and he was just checking that I've got it right. So let's see how we go. So this week,
all right, mate. 5 votes. I thought returning to his best form, Jordan Lewis, 27 possessions at 85%, 14 contested, 11 clearances, 6 inside 50s. Okay, we're playing GWS, but I thought easily his best game and deserving of votes. Given 4 to Jack Gunston. Great performance from him as well. Marks, goals, inside 50s. Had a good game overall. 3 to Roughhead. Lazy 5 goals becoming the norm for him these days. Again on the ball, gaining possessions as a ruck rover. 2 to Mitchell, who had heaps of it. And the last one, mate, it could have gone to anyone, but I like the game of John Simpkin. I think he had 23 touches with 6 inside 50s. There's probably a couple of blokes who had a bit more of the ball, but he had something different to our side and rewarded him with a vote.
Excellent, Bards. Well, Jeff, if you want to know what the leaderboard is, I don't have it handy. I think Birchall and Hodge are still in front, but I would say Roughhead and Mitchell are clearly catching up, and you'll see that later in the week when I've worked it out. Bards, what I've worked out here, though, is every week you're throwing someone new in here, so I have to go and find a photo of them.
Yeah, that could be part of the plan. It's got to be an action shot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've got to get an action shot, and I reckon that's mission impossible right now. Jonathan Simpkin in a Hawthorn jumper in an action shot. Oh. Let's see how we go.
Come on, you can do it.
Well, let's move away from the Barslow votes and talk blast. Do have a blast. It was a pretty benign week.
Mate, I have a blast, and it's directed at Mr. Neil holier-than-now Mitchell of 3OW fame. As you guys know, I work late hours, I get up late, so it's about 10 o'clock and I'm reading through my Twitter and I've seen this story about Buddy. Then I see Mitchell's post that he thinks Franklin should be suspended for 4 weeks for this incident that was on today's front page. And he's based this purely on what is on the front page of the paper. He hasn't heard any other sides of the story. He's just thought, that's enough. Oh, big man Franklin, 6'6", standing over little petite girl. Franklin's out. He's been approached and abused, or one of his friends was abused, so he stood up and gave her a serve back. All right, not ideal situation. Probably shouldn't have done it. We'd all like to walk away, but when you're verbally attacked, you normally stand up for yourself, and that's what he's done. He hasn't done anything illegal as such. He's had to go back. He's gone home, got on her Facebook, bragged about the argument, which insinuates there's two people yelling at each other, that she's had with Franklin, and then written to the club, which is probably the right thing to do. The club's got back to her, given her a fair response. Franklin's wrong. He's made an apology, and she's happy with the result. Herald Sun, front page story, because Franklin hasn't signed a contract. So Mitchell uses that to decide that this bloke needs to be suspended for 4 weeks. Any coincidence that we're playing Melbourne in 2, Mitchell's team? Probably not. I don't think he's even silly enough to think that'd make a difference in that game. But all I can say, Neil, is get off your high horse, stop being the moral crusader for everyone that you think you need to be, and get back to your real job. And we know what that is, reading out a traffic report.
Oh, well, Bards.
I'm not saying this girl's done anything wrong. She's probably go at him and he's had to go back, and I'm not trying to put her under the pump for what she's done, but two sides of the story, and I think it's just better if they're both displayed.
It leads to a bigger question, doesn't it, for Buddy? It was raised tonight from the same radio station with three guys that, from a sporting point of view, we're probably happy to listen to. Healy, Russell, and, of course, one legend in Lee Matthews. They were talking about whether Buddy seriously needs to consider doing the Lockett thing, and that's going to Sydney, taking the money with GWS and getting out of the limelight. He can still do the stuff that he wants to do, that he does here in Melbourne, and good on him if that's what he wants to do. But because he's such a big man and he's got such a big presence and, you know, he is who he is, in Melbourne, he can't get away from it. But maybe he might be able to in Sydney. So, got to think that might be in his thinking, Bards.
Possibility that he might want to get out of the fishbowl and go up to Sydney. Whether that'll help him, being that his friends that he's hanging out with are well known in Sydney, a lot of rugby blokes that he gets around with, that might not be such a big thing up there, you know, because he will be recognised if he's with those sort of blokes. Look, it's a possibility, I suppose. The same reason why I don't think I could see him going back to Perth, because I think in Perth the scrutiny would be worse, because he'd be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. I guess there's a chance.
And the same for Adelaide as well. You know, he couldn't seriously contemplate going to Adelaide.
Why would anyone go to Adelaide, Grant?
Well, exactly. I was going to repeat that. You couldn't seriously think about going to Adelaide, except for the 100 or 200 odd South Australian Hawthorn supporters, because that's the only reason you go to Adelaide.
There's some great people in Adelaide, obviously, but for him, with the lifestyle and party life he likes to lead, it's probably not the ideal place.
So, look, interesting article today as well around other free agents that are out there. So, you know, there's $1 million in this salary cap. We could get some good value if he does go. Leuenberger?
Yeah, interesting one, mate. A ruckman, but he looks like being a good young ruckman and can go forward a bit. I suppose he'd be a replacement for Hale more so than Franklin, but that's not such a bad thing because, you know, that sort of adds the extra quality tool to the side, so he's an opportunity.
What about Jack Watts?
Don't think he'd suit us, only because I think the role that he could possibly play is a role that we've got Gunston to fill anyway. I think in a good side, Jack Watts would be a good footballer. I think the pressure at Melbourne and trying to make him the man early on, I think it was too much for him, and I hope he gets a fresh start somewhere else because I think he's got talent.
What about young Spud Frawley?
Yeah, another interesting one, mate. The full back type. His season hasn't been so good this year, but previously it has, and obviously with Melbourne's fortunes the way they are, you'd back him to come out the other side with the form that he showed over the last couple of years. So would be interesting. I guess he would slot in sort of where we've got Lake at the moment, or beside Lake. It's funny, you know, we didn't have a backline a little while ago, and now we're wondering if Shoemaker's a fit, how we'd fit them all in. So probably not the player we need as much as we thought we did, but I'm sure he'd be handy.
Colin Sylvia?
Pass.
And the last one you've thrown up to me earlier today was Lockie Whitfield.
Yeah, young Lockie Whitfield. Reports are that he was a mad Hawthorn supporter as a kid, has a cousin currently on Hawthorn's list, and doesn't intend to stay up there for too long. That's just what I've heard, but obviously a gun player. How you'd get him, I don't know. He's obviously not going to be a free agent, so there's going to be trades or he's going to walk to the draft. So, look, it's probably a long shot to actually get him to your club, especially with other clubs in and about. But, look, would love to have a player of his quality at the club.
And it's been the week for Hawthorn and running with journos, isn't it? Poor old Clarko at the airport.
Yeah, poor Matt Thompson from AFL Media copped a serve there. But seriously, if you're a journalist, you can't go asking a coach going to a game if he's taking the game seriously. It doesn't matter if you're playing GWS Melbourne or you're packing them thirds. The game's going to be taken seriously. And even if you think you're going to win it, you're not going to tell a journo, "Oh no, we think this is in the bag, we're not even going to try." Silly question. I think Clark was just a bit frustrated by being asked such a question, and so he answered it the way he could, and as he walked away, he just gave him a little bit of a clip.
He called him a cockroach. They were a great band once upon a time.
Cockroach. Okay, that's not quite what I heard, but I'll go with that.
Well, that's what I thought he said.
So be careful with lip reading, Grant. Bit of dramas with Harry O'Brien during the week as well.
All right, Bards, well, let's go with Fair Suck of the Sav.
All right, mate.
Not about umpires, because when you have a game like we did, it can't be any more than just well umpired, surely. So this one's to Kevin Sheedy, because I don't care that he doesn't coach Essendon anymore. He's still a mongrel. He's still got that Essendon thing about him. And I've got to say, Fair Suck of the Sav. They're always going to be beaten by a margin of between 80 to 100 points. And what's he do? He puts a hard bully boy Essendon type tag on Birchall. What was the point? Really? Fair suck of the sack. What did he think he would achieve? Other than get Birchall mad, you lose your potential of winning a coup in the Brownlow with your bet.
Yeah, that's gone.
Fair suck of the sack.
Fair enough. I just hope he hasn't written out the game plan for other opposition coaches.
Yeah, that's probably the bigger observation I made. That was probably showed a chink in the armour a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, I was actually hoping that Clarko, he's obviously told him to deal with it, which is good, but part of me wanted Clarko to just throw him to a half-forward flank and see if he could get his own ball up there. But look, it's obviously something he's going to have to cop and put up with, and maybe he would put up with it from a better side, but when you've got a young kid doing that sort of stuff to you all game, I can understand the frustration.
Okay, well, that's sort of what's happened during the week. We better get onto that segment, I say from the 70s and 80s, but we've re-energised it. It's back in the 210s, whatever this generation or decade's called nowadays, and it's time for From the Backline.
Thank you very much, Grant. And not a lot of changes down at Hawthorn this week. So we've got the Gold Coast on Sunday, 1:10, I believe, at the MCG. Thinking we're going to have a bumper crowd there. From the back line, Stratton, Lake and Guerra. Halfbacks, Mitchell, Gibson, Birchall. Centre line, Smith, Hodge and Shields. Half forwards, Piopolo, Franklin and Lewis. The forward line is Gunston, Roughhead and Bruce. Followers, Bailey, Sewell and Burgoyne. And the interchange being a squad is from Spranger, Simpkin, Grimley, Hill, Duray, Cheney and Osborne. So Gibson, Cheney, Grimley and Hill in, and David Hale out with an ankle. Which, after Gibson's ankle last week, I think ankle might be Hawthorn's word for rested.
Well, I reckon. Think about it. He's resting his ankle. He's putting it up. He's putting his feet up.
That's right. And look, if there was a player that was due for a rest, I think Hale was the ideal one. Looking at that, mate, I would say that Sam Grimley is going to debut because we've taken a ruckman out. I guess the only other option is Gibson coming back in, maybe Spranger pushes forward and Roughhead plays in the ruck, but you'd be mad to put Roughhead in the ruck to form his in down forward. So I reckon the young Grimley might get a game here.
So, talking to Spanger, what did you think of his performance on the weekend?
Thought he tried really hard to be an option offensively. Ran forward the ball a lot, tried to put himself in the right position, but did let young Jeremy Cameron let him get the better of him and drift off him and kick a few goals. So defensively, he probably laxed a bit. Obviously, with the ball not going down there a lot, he probably thought he could afford to. Costs a few goals, but look, he looks all right. Needs a haircut, to be honest. Can't run around like that playing for Hawthorn. Chop it off. But look, I think he'll be handy. He might even be better as a forward, but important to get time into him because if Lake or Gibson go down, heaven forbid, then he will need to play. So, yeah, happy to see him get a run, and hopefully he gets another one this week just to give him 2 games before he makes way for the normal side again.
Yeah, it was interesting on one of the sites here. It was the New South Wales or the Sydney supporters site that someone went early on Spanger, and I've got to be honest, I went with them because he reminded me first game that Showmakers had. He looked like, and it was a day match admittedly, a deer in headlights.
Yeah, and we need to remember he's played footy and he's played some quality footy, so he's not in for a first game. But look, I mean, a lot of fans out there are looking for a whipping boy straight away as well, with Shoemakers out of the side, so maybe Spanger's it. But as I said, I think he can be important to us, and I don't see him being in our starting side, but he's definitely our best backup in that sort of position at the moment.
He's got one of those whipping boy numbers. He's got 27, and that was my observation.
Well, Stephen Gillam didn't cop that much, did he? John Barks?
No, but it's in that range of 20s, late 20s that you get that whipping boy image, early 30s.
Yeah, okay.
So Madigan 31, Murphy 29, it's a tradition up there, so he could suffer from that.
High 20s to low 30s is a bad area.
Yeah.
So.
Showmakers had it 25, it's just that thing that we have about the numbers. Where will we win this? Because it will be a harder game than last week, of course. They are on the improve.
Look, they are, mate. They're a decent side, no doubt about that. They're obviously not decent they're not going to push into the 8. Well, they would have been above Collingwood had Collingwood not got up last weekend, which would have been lovely. But look, I think we'll win the game because our spread of talent's just going to have him covered. I don't see him going with us all over the ground. Ablett will run around, do whatever he likes. We'll probably let him do whatever he likes, like we did in the corresponding fixture last year, where he ran amok. I think last time he had 30-odd possession against us and didn't get a Brownlow vote because he was ineffectual in the game, and I think that'll be the case this time as well. They just don't have enough else to really push us. So, but having said that, we will need to play good footy, and it's good because we don't want these 3 weeks to be a stroll through the park. We need to push hard and try to keep our systems in place. So, but to answer your question, we'll win the game because we're just a better side overall, mate. They can't match our forward line. Did they get Tom Murphy back? I haven't looked at their side. Murphy on Franklin could be interesting if he's back in the side. He was out last week with concussion, so he might be back. I think we'll have him covered, mate. I've decided 54 points sounds like a nice number. But yeah, I think it'll be an alright match.
Alright, well, I reckon 6 goals. It might be a little bit tighter as we tire or pull the foot off the pedal in the last quarter.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we'll get them by a bit more than that, but we'll see what happens.
Alright, now, we've forgotten the mug. The mug didn't go off, and we're going to carry over the mug to next week, and we might get Adam to ask a question and see we could award the mug for next week.
No worries. And we'll have to apologise to Jeff. He won't get his mug this week because I'm not going to the footy.
We will get it to you, Jeff. We know we owe you the mug, so we look forward to passing it on as a contributor to the site. So we better go, Bards.
All right, mate, we better, and hopefully a good win on Sunday, and we can be ready for Melbourne the week after.
Righto, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.